Thank you so much, Dolly. And thanks for staying with us, all of you watching this program for wherever you are watching from. The program is still Today with John and Helen live, and we are on Plus TV, and it is time to meet Miracle Ihuoma. He's a dynamic, you correct me later if I got it wrong. He's a dynamic speaker. He's a clinical psychologist. He's a life coach. He's a spiritual shepherd, and a lot more. A graduate of psychology with masters in clinical psychology. Our guest on the show at this time is the principal consultant, Life Affairs International, an integrated training and support organization. He's a young man who grew up in Ajegule but did not allow his environment to define him. Join me at this point to welcome and celebrate Miracle Ihuoma, a clinical psychologist, to help us dissect the topic. I'm so ashamed of myself right now. Drug addiction and the Nigerian youth. We're so glad to be able to have you here with us today. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Welcome.
You look very well, actually.
Thank you.
Let me first chastise Helen.
It's
so difficult to say Ihuoma.
Oh, go away. Ihuoma.
Ihuoma now.
Ihuoma. These things happen, you know. Sometimes.
No, that one is not acceptable. Helen.
I'm sorry.
No, Ihuoma. Yeah?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Miracle
I'm
Ihuoma.
sorry.
Well, anyway, my way of welcoming you is going to be with a direct question. You know, because when we look at our topic today, one would presume that parenting, you know, is facing a lot of challenges within the family circle, you know, especially in the preservation of our values. And that is a big deal. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. The family is the primary agent of socialization, as we've been taught. Every other agent of socialization, which is the society, school, church, are all secondary agents of socialization. So it means that whatever a child becomes can very much be linked to a very high percentage to the family, to parenting, right? And so parenting plays a very vital role in preservation of our values. And it's a pity that a lot of us have relegated, you know, our roles as parents, you know, to other people. Right, and a lot of the times, parents don't even know anything about parenting education, because there's something called parenting education. The fact that you are biologically endowed or endued to give birth to a baby does not in any way confer the necessary knowledge or expertise needed to train that child. So it's anybody who is at puberty age has all the makeup to conceive and give birth to a child. As a lady, as a guy, once you are of puberty age, it means that you have the necessary spermatozoa to impregnate a lady. But then, do you now have what it takes? Because a lot of times, parents can be arrogant when it comes to training or parenting their children, because they are like, well, I know what it takes. What is it to tell me that I don't know? You know, what are you telling me? My parents, you know, trained us very well. So how would you say that I don't know what it takes to train my own children? But that's what I call the arrogance of ignorance, because it's one thing to be ignorant and nothing to be arrogant. It's a double jeopardy when you are arrogant and ignorant at the same time. So it's important that every parent pursues parenting education and start learning how to train a child, because the very reason that you can give birth to a child can be the limiting factor for being able to train that child.
You learn on the job, though.
You learn on the job, yes, because we all learn forever. But then, that is why a lot of firstborns are scapegoats in Africa. And that's why we have a lot of firstborn prayer meetings. Because a lot of firstborns are experimental rats that as parents we used to experiment. And then many times we now get it better with other children. But then the firstborn now suffers. But even though a lot of the time experience has taught us that people don't learn from experience, so even after the first child, they still go ahead to do a very bad job with the other children. But it then says that parenting education should not even start when you start parenting. It should start before you start parenting. Because you don't prepare for war in war, you prepare for war before war.
Awesome. Awesome. You know,
Wow.
you see, some of these things are so, they are just like facts of life.
Yeah.
But it takes times like this and people like you to,
Bring it on.
to nail it in,
Yeah.
if I can use that word. Because the first child thing you just talked about,
Yeah.
Firstborn.
you know, if firstborn, if you take, what's that? You go and do a research, you know,
Yeah.
you find out that a lot of the firstborn children,
Yeah.
but firstborn are problem children, in quotes,
Yeah.
you know, and they are experimental, like you said,
Yeah.
because the parents probably were just trying out
Yeah.
which direction do we go, here or
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. All right. We're looking at drug addiction and the Nigerian youth. And I'm so happy that we're taking it from the family, because that is where it should start from. How about our educational institutions? Would they also have a role to play, you know, in the collapse of moral values that probably lead to this issue we're talking about, drug addiction?
Yes, yes. Except that our educational system is a secondary agent of socialization. And every other system, in fact, we have been said that there are 7 systems of the world. The system of the family, the system of education, the system of religion, the system of business and economy, the system of politics and governance, the system of media, and the system of arts and entertainment. These are the 7 systems that control the world. Except that the family is the production factory of the society. And it is the family that actually produces the personnel that actually mounts these other systems of the world. So if your family has done a bad job, the education system will still suffer, because it is the family that produced the people who are in charge of the educational system. Now, people create systems, and systems control people. So while there are a few people who create a particular system, that system now control the masses, a very large portion of the masses, right? So if we do a bad job with the family, we're going to get it wrong in other places, including politics. Because while a lot of the times we complain about governance and things like that, well, these people in governance were gotten from us. Just like somebody rightly said, that if you bring a basket of, if you choose eggs from a basket of eggs, let's say you choose two eggs, each weekend you want to make eggs from a basket of eggs, and every time you choose, you pick those 2 eggs from that basket and break them to fry, you discover that they are bad eggs.
Okay.
And then you've been doing this since 1960, right? And after a while, you should come to a point where you now realize that maybe the problem is not with the individual eggs. The problem is with the basket. Maybe this basket is a basket of bad eggs in the first place. So maybe we need to even overhaul the eggs. Because if we are complaining about our leaders, the leaders were taken from the people. So our leadership is also a function of our followership in that sense. So at the end of the day, the family is the production factory of the society. And yes, we need to do an overhaul of our educational system as well, where, beyond just maths and English and things like that, children are also taught basic things. And now these are narratives I've been trying to drive for a long time, and it's very important that we begin to embrace this, because we can't just keep doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. That's the definition of
Your narrative is beginning to bust my head. Because thinking about all these things that you're talking about is really the truth.
Yes, sir.
Now, and anyway, let's even assume that all of that is academic. All right. Now, I want to know, for people like you, you're a psychologist, yeah? For people like you, now give us examples of the level of decadence or the level of decay that we are facing in our society as a result of the loss of values.
Practical, from your experience.
Yeah, practical experience.
Yeah. So, okay, let me give a practical example. So, I worked at Yaba Neuropsychiatric Hospital.
Yaba left.
Yes, popularly known as Yaba left. Even if it should be known as Yaba right, because that's where a lot of work goes into that facility. And there is a word called the drug word. There are a lot of words, right? But there's a word called the drug word. The drug word is a ward where people dealing with drug addiction, substance use disorder are rehabilitated. All through my stay at the Yaba Psychiatric Hospital, there was, number one, no time where that ward had an empty bed space.
Wow.
There was no time. And in fact, that was the most populated ward in the whole of the facility. And number three, people were turned back countless times because there was no space to accommodate them. That's to show you how much of the breakdown of values have impacted on drug use, as an example. Right? I can go on to tell you, other areas where the breakdown of values have actually affected, people, young people, like myself in the society. So if I start telling you about it, giving you examples, we might not live here, really.
Yeah.
That's the truth, because I have loads and loads of examples, personal experiences, experience of other people, experience other people have shared with me and things like that.
The truth is that, unfortunately, on a daily basis, there's an increase, like you said.
Yes.
In people who are led, to taking drugs for various reasons. Now, the press is a very important arm of society, and the press has been inundated with stories of hard drugs and banned substances in the hands of our young people. How and why has this become so rampant?
Okay, the banning of.
Yes, apart from the family values, there's a lot of it. The use of hard drugs and all of it.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
Yeah. So, a very important case in point is banning certain type of drugs is good, but it's not the ultimate solution. Right? Because banning drugs is like cutting a tree from the stem. After a while, the tree will grow again. If you really want to, do away with that tree, you have to cut it from the roots. Right? Which means that, because if you ban a particular drug, say you ban cannabis, people will look for alternative drugs. One who is addicted. So, okay, I can't find this. What else can I find? That's why we've seen people inhale latrines. We've seen people use all kinds of things that they can lay their hands on just to get the high that they feel with these drugs. Because just like we heard one time that we wanted to ban sniper because people were using it as a means of committing suicide or dying by suicide. Now that's also what I'm talking about. If you ban sniper, people will look for other alternatives. It's as simple as that. So the issue here is not with the banning. The issue here is, number one, we need to create more awareness. People need to become more aware of these things. People need to know the consequences of these drugs. People need to know that there's a way out. That is where it starts from. And then we need to also now begin to create programs, rehabilitation programs where we can help people. For instance, I was talking about suicide a moment ago. Now, there's a law in Nigeria that says that if you attempt suicide, you will be incarcerated. You would go to jail. Now, I find that law ridiculous because somebody who is attempting suicide is obviously going through, mental health challenges. What he needs is help, not incarceration. So what that person needs is a mandatory rehabilitation, not mandatory incarceration. That's what that person needs. Not to incarcerate the person, but say, okay, you know what? You must, whether you like it or not, go through rehabilitation, go through therapy and counseling for this number of time before we can reabsorb you into the society. Right? The same thing with drug issues. To say, okay, we have to create rehabilitation centers and encourage people to seek help, right? And reduce the stigma around these things. And then that's the way we can really begin to alleviate all of this from the society.
Okay. Miracle.
Sure.
You and I are young men. I don't know about Eddie. But I want to bring this thing closer home. Let's look at currency now. You're likely to follow celebrities. I love a lot of our celebrities today. But if you look behind the story, their stories, a lot of them, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them are pushed or propelled or activated by drugs, use of drugs, abuse of drugs.
Yeah.
How did we get there? And even listen to their lyrics in their songs, they even encourage followership.
While you're
drug
thinking
use.
about that, John, while he's thinking about the response,
Yeah.
my director said we need to take a very quick break.
Okay.
All right, so can we take that break? It won't be long. We'll be right back with Miracle. All right, thank you so much for your time. It's still Today with John and Helen live on PlusTvAfrica. And Miracle is still here, helping us to understand why the younger people are, gravitating towards drug addiction and drug use.
Yes,
You
we're
asked me a
talking
question.
about celebrities encouraging the use of drugs for
Yes.
themselves and even for the followers.
Yes.
So, can you give us your opinion about this?
Yes. So earlier I talked about the 7 systems that control the world, and I mentioned the system of arts and entertainment and media, right? And these are very powerful tools because arts and entertainment is what determines culture. If you want to change the culture for people, one of the tools you use is arts and entertainment. That is how we started dressing the way we are dressing right now, because we started watching it on the media. That's why young people started sagging, because we started watching it, through movies and things like that. And our culture, because what is culture? The way of life of a people, which include their dressing, which includes their language, which includes their behavior, their attitudes and things like that. So, and that is really the effects that the celebrities, or so-called celebrities, has had on our young people, because what you watch over time, you would become, because the ears and the eyes are the gates to the mind. Whatever you watch and you listen to consistently gets access into your mind, and once it gets access into your mind, it gets access into your life, right? So exposing, ourselves to this content, this lyrical content, and things like that from these so-called celebrities, now makes it look like, okay, it's admirable to actually do drugs. And what has now happened is that there is now an unconscious association between the use of drugs and success. Now, that is what we call classical conditioning in psychology, when we associate two things who are seemingly unrelated to become related. An example is the Pavlov dog experiment. What happened was that Ivan Pavlov, had a dog, and then, of course, whenever you bring food to a dog, the dog salivates naturally, right? So what he did was that he now associated the sight of food with ringing a bell. So before he brings the food to the dog, he rings a bell. So he rings the bell and then brings the food. He rings the bell and then brings the food. Over time, the dog got the signal. So whenever the dog hears the sound of the bell, it begins to salivate, even though he hasn't seen the food. So what has now happened is that there's now an association between the food and the bell to produce the same response. In other words, people have now seen that, okay, if this guy is successful and he is doing drugs, maybe I even need to do drugs to become successful, even though they are unrelated.
Yeah.
So that's what has happened with our young people. We have now related doing drugs, and all of those things with being successful. And it has created a negative ripple effect on our young people.
Wow.
Now, I started introducing you by saying you are a dynamic speaker, public speaker. And looking at your age, it means that you have situated yourself amongst the younger ones in terms of creating awareness, in terms of helping those who need help. What are the opportunities that are available? What are the, do you have a system? Do you have programs? Do you have places? Do you have events, where the young people can constantly, because this is not a one-off thing, there must be opportunities constantly, consciously, where the younger people can come listen to people like you. Are there such opportunities?
Yes, there are. And of course, if you follow me on social media, you will see each of those opportunities as they arise. right? Because we have programs from time to time where we get to educate people, where we get to inform them, about things like this, and then, try to reenact the right values that were passed down to us by our forefathers, if I might use that word. So, yes, there are programs like that, there are opportunities like that for more engagement, for more awareness, and for more information.
What's the reception like?
Yes, so it's a mixed reception. But then, of course, because a lot of young people are, quote and unquote, it is natural for young people to, quote and unquote, be rebellious in that sense. So there will be some resistance. That's why it takes tact, it takes knowledge and expertise to know how to get through to these young people as well. So while we face some resistance, we also have a lot of success with young people as well. Because one of the things that we must also know is that while there are a lot of people who are, who have embraced this wrong value, there are a lot of other people as well who have embraced right values, right? Because sometimes we can now look at every young person with the prism of one particular young person who is doing it wrong. But there are a lot of other people who want to live right, who are pursuing the right values, and who are embracing these right values. So we must always know and always, encourage those set of people as well. And there are people, for instance, who even have the wrong values right now, but they are willing to embrace the right values. There are people who, they know they are struggling and they are willing to get help, right? Because sometimes the struggle is genuine. Sometimes, even though it looks like it's by their decision, but then if you consider where they are coming from, if you consider the circumstances with which they grew, and all of those things, you would also now understand why they are in that fix. And many times, they want that help. Their heart is yearning for help. Because one of the things that is typical with addiction is learned helplessness. People get to a point where they have tried to, come out of this addiction by themselves, and they couldn't come out. And they now come to a conclusion that maybe, this is who I am.
My lifestyle.
This is who I am. Maybe I'm meant to just live with this particular thing. But no, you're not meant to live with it. You can get help, because whatever is learned can be unlearned. And if you learned this behavior, it means that you can unlearn it.
Well, I'll take that back to the issue of the parents or parenting, because you insinuated that at some point we've noticed that parents have had to relegate their duties, to the external, secondary,
yes, sir.
To the secondary influences. So where does it leave us now? Is there any hope for us to get our children back? Because the parents are needed, to help us get these children back. We can't leave them to the secondary forces.
Yes, sir.
So where's the hope?
Yeah, there's hope. When they said when there's life, there's hope.
Okay.
Yeah, because today is an opportunity to do it differently, right? Failure is an opportunity to get it right again, or to begin more intelligently, like somebody rightly said. So somebody rightly also said, it's a Chinese proverb. It says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. The second best time is now. So if we have gotten it wrong before, we can start by getting it right from now. By saying, okay, we did it wrong before, okay, where can we start from? And if you're a parent listening to me, it is important to know that you can get it right. No matter how wrong you've gotten it before now, you can start retracing your steps. Maybe you should start by calling for a family meeting tonight. Apologize to your children. Tell them that, before now I was ignorant and I didn't parent you well. I didn't do the best. I didn't do my best, and of course you won't blame me. I was ignorant, but now I've gotten some light, and I'm going to try my best as much as possible to begin to get it right. And you know what? You can start from where you are. If you go on YouTube right now and click or type, how can I become a better parent? You will see 1001 videos that would help you become a better parent. If you go on Google and type, how do I teach my children to become this type of people or good people in the society, you will see 5,000 content out there. Because a lot of the times, parents are giving excuses. Oh, I don't have money to go for trainings. I don't have money to go for seminars. But you can start from where you are. When there's a will, there is a way, right? If there's a will, you would always find a way. If there's no will, you always find an excuse.
Okay. Very cool. I'll take you back to Ajegule.
Yeah.
The environment shapes who we become eventually. you had your early beginnings, your life, you grew up in Ajegunle, simply put. Here you are today, life coach, with the zeal, encouraging people, learning the tricks of pulling people out of. Because Ajegunle has, give me an idea of your story. How was it possible that the Ajegunle, rightly or wrongly, that we know, didn't impact you negatively?
Okay, so I'll talk about that from two perspectives. Number one is the narrative about Ajegunle. Ajegunle is not as bad as people say, right? Yeah, even though
not before.
Even from time immemorial, right? Yeah, it had. There were a lot of bad things about Ajegunle, right? The same way those bad things exist in every society, in every environment and local government, right? So it's not peculiar to Ajegunle. But I understand that yes, Ajegunle, of course, had issues with it being a slum, some parts of it being a slum, and then there were also a lot of gangs here and there. So, having said that, I would now give you an hint into how I grew up. Okay. Right? I grew up in a compound. In fact, I would rather call it a yard because that's not a compound; it's a yard. Because we were lots in the compound. I think up to 15 tenants.
Wow.
Yeah. So I grew up in a one-room apartment. With my siblings. We were 8 in total, including my mom and my dad. 8 in one room. Yeah, in that compound, or in that yard. And then at the back, boys at the back of our compound, it was an open space. Boys gathered there to actually smoke Indian hemp, right? And use other kinds of drugs. So that's what I grew up seeing every day. So okay. I grew up seeing those guys every single day. If there was no time you got there, you didn't see somebody who was smoking.
And in a one room with 8 people, you had to be outside a lot more than inside your house.
In fact, there was a time as we grew up, there was a time where, because we had now grown, when we were a bit younger, we were not as big as we as adults.
The space wasn't
so the space wasn't no longer enough. So sometimes somebody would have to come and sleep in the passage, so as to allow for other people to sleep in the room. So I grew up seeing all of those things. We had street fights, we were always fighting. This was fighting this other one. These are the things I grew up seeing. In fact, I remember as a child, I would even mimic those fights. Sometimes I would just get on and start fighting, beating the air, because of the things I saw. But then, one of the reasons why that didn't affect me, maybe as much as it should, was because of my upbringing. So I had a father and a mother who instilled the right values and insisted that we follow up on and follow through with these values, right? So I wasn't allowed to associate with any of those guys. If my dad or my mom cannot see you, it was impossible to see you associating with those guys. In fact, I love playing football. My dad stopped me from playing street football. He said if I want to play football, I should go to the field. I should not play football on the streets. So he made sure that those values, were instilled in us, so that even though we saw those things and heard those things, we didn't turn out like those people. Yeah, because there is what is called your physical environment, but there's also what is called your psychological environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The director is saying we're almost done.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. But could you just quickly tell us before we wrap up? This decadence, call it decadence, is it peculiar to Nigeria, or is it?
Of course not. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's not peculiar. It's all over the world. All over the world.
Level too?
Maybe not at this level, because a lot of factors will come to play, especially when it comes to psychosocial factors, right? Like our economic power. But poverty is more prevalent in this part of the world, so it would give rise to things like that, because people will look for other ways to cushion the effects of their pain. So they would go the way of drugs. So it is definitely more in this part of the world than other parts.
Final word, that line, that word, that sentence that you would, spill out to that young man, that young girl who's watching at this point in time and probably doesn't know where, what next step to take.
Yeah. Yeah. So that young man, that young woman listening to me right now, who might be hooked on drugs, who might have given up on themselves, who might be feeling right now that there's no hope and that, this is who they are, right? That's not who you are. That's who you have become, because there's a difference between who you are and who you become. You were a crystal pure water that came from the divine. That is who you are. You were contaminated by your upbringing, by your environment, and by significant emotional experiences. So I need you to know that, like I said earlier, what you learned, you can unlearn. And just take the courage to seek help, because help is available. Don't give up on yourself. So there is help available. Reach out and get the necessary help that you need. Yes, there are a lot of people who were in your shoes before now, but they are on the underside of they are on the other side of the divide, and they have gotten the necessary help that they need, and they are whole, they are sane, and they are positive influences in their society right now. You can be that person as well.
Terrific. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Amen.
God bless you. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, man.
We'll have you again.
Thank you.
All
I
right,
look forward to it.
John.
Thank you so much, Miracle.
Thank you.
This problem stares us in the face.
Yes.
Just like
Every
Helen
day.
said. It's something we would like to revisit again and again until we hit home.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. So like they say, we're almost at the last bus stop of this show. All right. If you stay with us another minute or two, we'll be saying our bye-byes. Stay with us. All right. We did promise we were going to give you a good show at the beginning of the show, when we took off this morning. And we hope we have tried, John.
I think we have.
Yeah, our two guests have been terrific. They've been amazing. Young people doing amazing things in our environment. Don't forget that you can watch this show every week after we leave the studio. There's always a playback on Saturday night at 10:30 and on Sunday morning at 9:30. Amongma Helen Odele. Why no more Helen? Amongma Odele. And it's been my pleasure bringing the show your way
I
today.
know you want me to say Akufo Senaya. I'll see you again next week.
Bye for now. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.